Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And before I get started, at the end of the video, we do talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the episode. Also, be sure to give this video a like, comment all your thoughts on this week's comics. That way we can push this video through the algorithm and get even more people to watch. But let's jump into this video. I have 14 comics, a pretty large haul for the week, and number 14 for me is Laura Kinney, Sabretooth issue 1. Same thing I've been saying about these X-Men Age of Revelation books. They just don't feel like they're going anywhere. I'm just not invested in this world enough to feel invested in these character beats they're trying to do with this issue. And for me, the artwork in this book in particular is a little lacking, which also makes it a bit difficult to get into the series. I was picking this one up because I know it's gonna kind of follow through in the next Laura Kinney book, but I just don't know if I'm gonna get the next issue. Even though that's the last issue of this mini, it just hasn't done much for me. So giving that one 2 stars, and that is number 14. Moving on to number 13, which is Birds of Prey, issue 27. I just feel like this book has lost a little steam as it's been going to the end of the series. I wish it had a little bit more character moments instead of more focusing on the plot and their mission. I just haven't been as interested in their mission, and I just like the play between these characters a bit more. I did love the artwork for this though. I thought the art was really solid, and there's a pretty interesting cliffhanger to get us to, I think, the last issue. I believe next issue is the last issue, so we'll see what ends up happening to that character. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12, which is The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 15. Not a bad book, but not anything that personally interests me about Spider-Man. Like, I enjoy the friendly neighborhood aspect of the character, so to pull him out and make him go to space and interact with all these other characters just doesn't interest me as much. I do think artwork is good. The ending with the girl, Peter's been, I think, with 5 different girls in 5 different series. It's hard to keep track. The story itself with Peter being in space, I think it's interesting that we get to see the great power comes great responsibility aspect in a new setting, but again, the interactions with the supporting cast just isn't as entertaining as his supporting cast that we know and love for decades and decades. So giving this one 2.5 stars. The art is solid, and I do feel like the art's been pretty solid overall with the new takes on Spider-Man, but it just didn't do it for me. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 12. Moving on to number 11, which is a new indie, No Place, issue 1. Kind of a tie-in to like Wizard of Oz, or at least Dorothy's in this book, where this girl was promised this world and she lived in a great place that's kind of like Oz. Then she's brought back to her home that isn't so great. And then she gets to meet people like Dorothy, be like, all right, do you go back? Is that possible? So there's definitely an interesting concept here. Very heavy on the world though, and I'm not much of a mythology person, so I don't know if this will carry me to 10 issues in, but it gave me enough to see where issue 2 is going to go. So giving that one 3 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Batgirl, issue 13. I don't love that it's only focusing on the League of Assassins side of stuff, the League of Shadows, but I think there were some more interesting character beats with Nyssa and this potential romance. I enjoyed Cassandra for the few moments that we do get to see of her having this panic attack because she hasn't dealt with trauma and she hasn't healed herself, and I think that's a really interesting story about Cassandra, and I want to see more of that. I think there's just a lot of characters they're trying to balance, and I just want to really focus on Cassandra. This is her book, so that's more what I want from the series. But I thought there was little sprinklings of that in this issue with a really solid art team for this. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, a graphic novel, Danny Phantom, Fair Game. I randomly stumbled upon that Danny Phantom was going to have a comic that continued the show, and the show does leave you on a cliffhanger of the ghost world and how people react to the ghost world. It's not so secret anymore, and that's what this issue involves. I like the relationship between Danny and the ghost hunter. I thought was interesting, and I liked where that went in the end. There's definitely other characters I wanted to see a little bit more though of. Jazz was not in this at all, and then the Tucker and Sam, they're in it, but there's not much played with in this issue. It really is more about Danny and the rest of the ghosts. So, you know, I thought it was interesting. It was fun. I'd probably pick up another volume of this, but it didn't hit everything I personally enjoy about Danny Phantom. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is Absolute Superman issue 13. I thought this was some good movement where we get to see Smallville versus the Lazarus people, and then we also get to see Ra's al Ghul finally come into play. And I really liked how people were just seeing Superman and people's opinions on Superman. There is a lot of dialogue here, so it's sometimes a little hard to get through, but overall I think it has some good character moments and obviously some interesting placement for where the characters are gonna go. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is Minor Arcana, issue 11. This is more about point A to point B. We get a little bit more information about our main character's mother's boyfriend, some more pieces kind of moving for her friends whose brother is missing and we find out is dead, and of course a little bit more exploration of the mythology, which was cool. So I thought it was a solid issue, still a really great character book, and still one of my favorite series on stands right now. So giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, so we're getting to the topic of the video, which one was the better Bat book this week? And the lower Bat book was DCKO Nightfall issue 1. I still liked it. Obviously, it's pretty high on my list, just missed the top 5. I think the thing that brings us a little lower than the other Bat book I'm going to talk about in a bit is that I do think it's a lot of story we've seen before and executed in a way that's very similar to what we've seen before. We've seen Dick Grayson as Batman. We've seen Batman die and Dick Grayson become Batman. I think the thing that I enjoyed the most was where the other Robins were at and how they were affected. That, I think, issue 2 is going to bring some interesting stuff. Also, obviously, you kind of have to stall the story a little bit, right? It ties into DCKO because he's out of that tournament, but it's in this whole other world. It's the future. They don't even really know what the tournament is, and he's gonna have to get out of this to get back into the tournament. So it does feel a little bit like a side story, but it still was a fun side story. I still enjoyed Bruce having to face his fears, I guess, and face what Gotham is like without him, for negative and for positive, and what that means for his family. And I obviously liked the art. I really liked how stylized this future looked. I enjoyed the costumes, which is why it's so high up, but why it's a little lower is just because, yeah, it's not really exploring tremendously new ground, where I think the other Batman book did a little better at telling a similar story we've seen, but from a new angle. So giving this one 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Planet She-Hulk issue 1. I really like that one shot, and I feel like this book does a pretty good job at tying into that one shot. You don't need to read that to understand what's going on here, and it's She-Hulk being a fish out of water. She does not want to be on Planet Hulk. She is just kind of thrusted into this multiple murder mysteries and drama of these planets, and I enjoyed that human point of view to kind of ground the story a bit. I also felt like the artwork was really unique. At first I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not, and then as I went through the story, it just was a really unique look for Planet Hulk, and again, a more sci-fi look. So giving that, I believe that was 4 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Cheetah and Cheshire rob the Justice League issue 4. This is also kind of moving pieces together as Cheetah wants to go up against Wonder Woman. Everyone's like, nah, let Harper do it because she has a connection to the Justice League, and Cheetah does whatever she wants anyways, and that's pretty much the issue, but there's some really good character moments here. Beautiful facial expressions by Nicola Scott, and a really fun, again, Ocean's 11 feel to this book that I've been really enjoying. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, the other side of this topic, which is Batman issue 3. I love this book. Honestly, it's been 3 out of 3. I've enjoyed every issue for different reasons, and I felt like this issue fit a lot of things into this, which were minute but still very special. Like, I love the opener of this book where it's just this boy interviewing his grandmother and saying, how has Gotham changed? And you really get to see her modern perspective and her opinion on how cities in general change and where we're at in the world. And, you know, you do have Riddler in this, and you get a little bit of story with that, but I honestly, again, enjoyed those, like, smaller character moments. Like, I really enjoyed Batman visiting Tim at the hospital. I've always wanted to like Bernard as a character and never really had a chance to. I don't feel like he's ever put his foot in the right direction. Some of the series he's been in. These 2 pages made me like Bernard more than I ever had in other issues because it gave him a perspective. Here, he does not know that Tim is Robin, so he's just seeing that his boyfriend is getting hurt and is always with his dad when it happens. He's like, what's going on here? I want to see what's up. And obviously Bruce not really knowing what to say about that. I love the moments with Damian and Bruce, where Bruce is trying to give Damian a different perspective, and he's like, haha, how about you? You know, you kind of live for this work as well. So those small moments, for me, were even better than kind of the Riddler exploration. But even Riddler, the things I liked was not just the plot progression, it was that Batman was figuring out all these riddles before him, or figuring out Riddler's riddles, and, you know, he kind of explodes and is upset about that. So I just really love the little moments that feel a little different from what we've been getting from Batman. It feels like you're just entering this world and you have those slice of life moments while you're kind of having bigger moments happen as well, which is great while DCKO is going on, because it doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel like, why is Batman here when DCKO is going on? It kind of has this lost episode feel to it that, it doesn't feel like they're conflicting with each other, which is hard to do when you have a flagship in such a big event and they're not tying in with each other. So I enjoyed this issue. I've been loving the series. So for me, Batman issue 3 was better, but honestly, you should get both Batman titles and put them on your list. So that's number 3 for me, and that was 4 stars. Moving on to number 2, another DC book. There's a lot of great DC books this week. I really was happy with my pull in that regard. And number 2 is Harley and Ivy, Life and Crimes. How did they get together? And this issue feels like an indie book, which I really like. I like the perspective. I like that you can tell that this creator who did the Unbreakable Squirrel Girl enjoys these characters and wants to tell this story. I enjoyed the pacing of it, of Harley and Ivy kind of like play fighting with each other. And what was most creepy and what really made this issue is how Harley got out of the relationship with Joker and how horrible that relationship was. And you can also kind of place the timing, because he had the skin mask to Scott Snyder's run, which I thought was interesting. I also kind of liked how the art style was cartoony but still very serious when you get to see the Joker stuff, which was just brilliant, the way the visuals were in this issue. I just thought it was a really good first issue to get us to an even bigger story, to talk about Poison Ivy and Harley and how they got together and how Harley broke up with the Joker and got away from that relationship. So giving that one 4.5 stars, I really enjoyed this one and can't wait to see where it goes. Moving on to number 1, which was Absolute Green Lantern issue 8. I wish more people were picking up this series because I really like it. And this issue in particular proves why I really enjoy the series. It's such a character-driven issue where we go back to find out, how did Jo end up in the place she did? Literally, how did she end up there? We see her relationships with her father, with her wife, where Jo was not a good person to her wife. I think in the last 2 issues, you're like, it had to be Chase. It had to be her who was not good. And it's like, no, Jo was not a good person and cheated on her with Renee, which I thought was really interesting to bring her into the fold. All while we're obviously digging into some of the Green Lantern stuff in the end of how Jo was introduced to that, and now what Chase is going to have to do now in the present that she is a Green Lantern, her ex-wife, and where that's going to bring us. So I thought it was a really good origin story. I liked getting a peek behind the curtain to make whatever is going to come up next even more powerful. So giving that 4.5 stars, that's my pick of the week. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite books of the week were. Last week's pick of the week was Black Cat, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.